I thought it appropriate because it's the beginning of school, you've been in for a couple weeks, and thought it'd be a good time to start. So, if you know me, you know I love people. I love talking to people. I love hanging out with people. I love making jokes, having fun. And I've been this way ever since I was really young. There wasn't really a person that I was like, I don't think we'll ever be friends if we ever don't meet. However, when I was in first grade, I learned my first very hard lesson about friendship. So I was in a combo class, which meant I had first graders, which was my grade, and second graders, the grade above, in the same class throughout the year. Now, being in first grade, didn't have a lot of time to build friendships. You have like a year in kindergarten, and it's kindergarten. So when a girl who was in second grade, what? What, Titus? When a girl came up to me that was in second grade and was like, hey, let's play at recess. I was like, all for it. We had fun. We did it for a couple of days. And then I remembered I wanted to play tetherball because I wanted to dominate. Also, if you know me, I'm competitive. Deal with it. But she did not like that. When I got done playing, we were heading back into the classroom, and she was like, listen, you can only be my friend. You can't be anyone else's. And that's just kind of how it's going to work. And I was devastated because I'm not necessarily that person that just is like, I have one and I'm done friend. Like, I love people. So I liked going around and talking to people and going from like group to group to group. I had thought I'd done something wrong. I went home, told my mom, and in her infinite wisdom, she said, don't ever stop being you. If the person cannot handle that, it's not because there's something wrong with you. But you should always be kind, you should always be nice, but you don't have to change who you are to have someone be your friend. This person wasn't being the friend that I needed. She was being a friend that worked only for her, in her way, in what she determined to be right. So I think we tend to talk about friends and friendships at the beginning of the school year just because it's kind of a natural cycle. You go into classes, you might have new people there. Things change over the summer. People, have different experiences. And when I look around at like our city, at our nation, at our world, I see in the news, in media, when you drive around town, I see people that need a friend. They might be lonely or different or in a situation that causes them to be looked at differently, but whatever it is, I see people that are alone. I see people that are kind of pushed to the side, pushed away, being isolated. I also think that there's an idea that if a friendship is truly meant to be, then it will always be easy. And I can tell you from a lot of personal experience, that is not necessarily the case. Friendships, specifically ones that last, take time, energy, sacrifice, and selflessness for them to actually thrive. And I think when we talk about friendships within the church, especially, it's usually about who we need to surround ourselves with. And while super important, and we do need to have kind of that idea of what type of a friend is a good friend to be in contact with, I want us to check the other side, and I want us to talk about us. I want you to strive to be the friend you need. And what I mean by that is instead of waiting for a person to come along that is the friend that like meets all those criterias and all those characteristics, I want you to be that person for other people. For other friends that you already have in your own life, or for friends that are yet to be your friends. And they can be Christians, they can be non-Christians, but people that you are going to have interactions with on a daily basis. Because when you become that person, it becomes contagious. And more importantly, as Christians, when we decide to be this person, this friend that we kind of want to strive to be, we are able to become that visible evidence of God's love to others. I have an older sister, And like every younger sibling, I tended to want to hang out with her and her friends, mainly her friends. We get it for siblings, and be accepted into that group. You're like, I don't have anyone. That is kind of why we search for our friends, right? We want acceptance, we crave that belonging. And this is a little bit of a sidetrack, but it's for free. So here you go. Where we go wrong in this is when we try and place our identity and our value into the friendship and not into our relationship with God. When we search for acceptance and belonging that only happens on earth and not with our Creator, we will definitely kind of go amiss and go astray. God shows us the truth of ourselves and supports us and guides us. But when we place that trust in a person or a group of people, we will inevitably be hurt and disappointed, simply because they are human, and that's human nature. Humans are going to disappoint you. Your connection to God will transform your connection to other people. So, my sister, she had a friend named Sarai, still alive. Her name is Sarai. I thought she was the absolute best person in the world. I almost named my daughter after her. That's how much I admire her. You might be thinking, well, why? This is a high schooler, year or two older than you. Like, what was so amazing about her? There were never any barriers as to who she would befriend. Didn't matter their background, didn't matter if they were considered popular, didn't matter if they disagreed with her on every single value that she held in her life, that was still a friend. She was always the first person to reach out. So if she was part of a youth group and she saw someone that was new coming into the youth group, like first person to go up and introduce herself. That's the type of person she was. She never thought she was better than the other person. She is an amazing soccer player. An amazing soccer player. And she has coached soccer. She is a high school soccer coach. Fabulous. But she never let that become her identity. She let others have the spotlight. She would include them into the group if there wasn't a group for them. You could never define her group with one label. And she surrounded herself with others that had these same values and had these same ideals. Now, there was one time that my sister was gone on a mission trip while we were both in the youth group together. I was in a club sports team, and so I had a tournament that was over that same weekend. And so she was able to go, and I was not able to. Super bummed, because, trips are fun, youth group trips. If you have a chance, go on one. But she came over to the house, saw her drive up in her car, and I was like, dropping something off. Maybe my sister left something for her. She came to take me to dinner. It was Del Taco, but stay. That was our church hangout. She took me to dinner. She recognized that I was having a hard time dealing with the fact that I couldn't go on this trip. And so she didn't want me to feel left out. She recognized the blessing of being present when others weren't. And she modeled this idea of scriptural friendship. So I wanted to be a friend like Sarai that doesn't lean on others for acceptance or value, but leans into God to show what that love and friendship truly can be. So there's a really amazing example of friendship in the Bible between Jonathan and David. I encourage you to go read all of the story, but we're just going to talk about some highlights. So what made it so special? On paper, they are not a likely pair. David was a shepherd. Jonathan was a prince. Jonathan had his own armor, and beyond that, own armor bearer to carry said armor. David had a harp and a slingshot. Jonathan grew up in the palace and was trained in the art of war and politics, everything he would need to run a kingdom. David grew up in a very small town of Bethlehem and was trained to tend sheep. Jonathan was the oldest son, in line to inherit a throne. David was the youngest of 8, but he was anointed as the next king of Jerusalem. None of these kept them from being the deepest of friends because it did not matter to them. David was considered this hero because of his accomplishments. We all know David and Goliath, slaying the giant, and then he continued to become a soldier and a general that was very well regarded, that songs were written about. Everyone kind of shifted their focus from the king to him in ways of like praise. Jonathan could have been jealous of that, and he could have been threatened by that. But he saw what God saw. He saw a man who was devoted to God. In 1 Samuel 16, it said, "The Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." And if we were to take anything of what to base our friendships on and how to be that friend that others really desperately need sometimes, that's where we can start. We can start by not looking at the surface of what people present, but instead to go deeper than that. And the only way we can kind of move beyond that is to look through God's eyes. And the only way we can look through God's eyes is if we are in a tight communion with God and surrender every day our agendas, our plans, our thoughts. Jonathan had this spiritual insight about David. Now, there are certain attributes about their friendships that really make it noteworthy, but can easily be applied to how you take on friendship today. So first is, don't bail when it's hard. Jonathan's father, King, who was his father? This is where you come in.
Arthur.
Starts with an S.
Solomon.
Saul. I see you. King Saul wanted to kill Jonathan's best friend. Now, I want you to think of your best friend. If your parent or guardian verbally expressed the desire, the very real desire to kill your best friend, how many would say adios? Right? Not worth it. Jonathan's father literally threw a spear at his head. My mom would be throwing a spear at my head because of the way everyone was looking and treating David. And basically going Jonathan, how dare you do this to me, your father, but your king, and made a very clear statement with that spear about exactly how he felt about it. Even though that happened, Jonathan was like, you know what? It's okay. My father will think that. I'm going to give you my utmost devotion, because he saw beyond what other people were seeing, especially his father. He saw that God had anointed this individual as someone that would lead Israel in the next kind of generation. We often need a friend that's like that through it all. We want to be a die-hard friend, not a die-easy friend. We want someone that will be there. Yes, cue all the die-hard jokes in your head. It's fine. We want to be there for that person, not when it benefits us. Because if we're just there when it's easy, that friendship isn't going to last. It's not going to be a deep friendship. It's not going to be something that can withstand all the things that are going to be thrown at you that the world will inevitably bring. To be clear, there are seasonal friends. And to be honest, a lot of people that you are friends with right now in high school are going to be seasonal friends. And that's fine. Those friends are there to help you go through a season. Now, some of you will stay friends with people that you know in high school, and that's great. But just because you hit difficulties doesn't mean that friendship should end, especially if there is a connection through Christ in that friendship. Because we we as a community of believers, we as a community of Christians need to ultimately always support each other. The world is hard as it is. And if we're going out there without anyone covering our backs, without anyone kind of supporting us in the things that we need to be supported in, it is going to be a long and heavy road. I have a friend, I've spoken about her a couple times. She's the one that her and her husband are going through a really difficult patch. Affairs, all that fun stuff. Whenever she crosses my mind, and sometimes it's at the weirdest time that she will come to my mind, I text her. I use that as almost like a spiritual prompting to be like, I need to connect with her. And when I do, I literally ask, what's going on? How's it going? Do you need to vent? And inevitably, I will get, no joke, a text back. Sometimes good, sometimes not. But I give her the space to do it. We don't live near each other. We were college roommates for years. And so we are really close, but now we are geographically not close. And sometimes when we're geographically not close, we tend to drop that friendship just because it's like out of sight, out of mind. But if you have that connection with God and He allows you to use those friendships to be that support for others, like listen to that. Start tuning into that. If someone crosses your mind, even if you don't have the ability to text them, pray for them. Like that's something that is extremely powerful that you can do. So don't bail when it's hard. Next, speak well of your friend to others. So Jonathan, in regards to David, always spoke well of him, including to his fathers. And there's two specific instances in the scriptures in 1 Samuel where he defends David to his father, even after knowing his father's actual feelings about him, about giving a command to kill him on sight. And he's like, no, but listen, he is a good man. He is a good, godly man. And he continues to defend his friend in front of his father. And you would think his father would be one of the people he wouldn't have to do this with. One of the ways we don't speak well of people is when we gossip. So here's a good rule of thumb. If they aren't in the room, they shouldn't be part of the conversation. So think about hanging out with your friends. You're hanging out in your room, in their room, living room, what have you. And if you start talking about someone that isn't present, stop. They are not there to be a part of it. So just good rule of thumb. So don't bail when it's hard. Speak well of this friend to others. Next, they celebrated their successes. Jonathan, like we said, on paper, should not have been friends with David. Nothing matched. There was no commonality outside of their faith. And Jonathan should have been the next one in line for the throne, and yet here is this shepherd, this lowly 8th son, and he's been told and anointed by God to be the next king. And Jonathan's like, yes, absolutely, let's do this. I'm fully behind you. Here's my robe, here's my sword, here's my armor. I fall in line with this. I 100% agree. And he celebrated it. He celebrated his success with Goliath. He celebrated his success as a general. And ultimately, he would have celebrated his success as the next anointed king. My very best friend, someone that I met in grad school, we have this thing that we do, and there's no rhyme or reason to when we text each other this, but we'll say, give me a happy. And basically what we're asking the other person is to tell something funny, something good that happened to you, or something that would make us laugh. And the other day I was messaging her because she's having a rough kind of season in her job. And I was like, hey, how's it going with your job? And like unloaded like all the things that had happened that day, to the point where it's like she's typing a novel and I'm like, I'm just gonna call. Like this needs to happen on the phone. So we're talking, and it's like, it's a really rough situation. And I'm just listening to her. And then she turns around. Tell me you're happy for the day. And I told her, like, something really good at my job happened that day. And like right off the bat, it was like, oh my gosh, way to go, Rachie. Like the biggest like congratulation like you could get on the phone. And that's what you need to do with others. I think sometimes it's the comparison that gets in the way, or the jealousy that gets in the way. But that friend that we need is the friend that will celebrate when something good happens to you. When you've accomplished something that you've been working on. When you get on a team that you've been trying out for and you were really nervous about. When you do well on tests, whatever it is, whatever you have as a success in your life, they celebrate it with you. In the same breath of them going, this is a sucky day for me. And then they can turn around and go, I am so genuinely happy that this is happening in your life. That's what we need to be for others. And lastly, Jonathan was willing to make the first move in the friendship and not when it benefited him. Of the two of them, we could not expect David to waltz into the palace and be like, you, Jonathan, you're my friend. Like, breaks protocol. Like, probably would never be allowed into that palace, first of all. And Jonathan knew that. He grew up in the palace. He knew the ways of the world. He knew how things worked. And so instead, Jonathan saw beyond the titles, beyond the labels, beyond the differences, and was the first one to reach out to start that friendship. The other person that does this, and you're going to say, yep, is Jesus. He would go to the ones that we would never dream of asking to talk, and he would go sit and talk with them. He went to the person sitting alone at lunch. He went to the person who acts better than everyone else. He went to the person that no one would. So I challenge you to lean into the courage that God can give you and make that first move. Your value isn't dependent on how many friends you have or who's your friend, but your value comes from God. And your job as Christians is to make sure that everyone you come in contact with knows that truth as well. Let them know that they are valued enough for you maybe even to step outside of your comfort zone to connect with them. Because at the end of the day, when you have your friends, you are there as a part of a community. And you want to ask yourself, am I just here because it looks right, it sounds right, it fits in the grand scheme of where I want my life to go? Or am I just there to be entertained by the drama and by the worldly view of friendships because you're only going to stick around when it benefits you? What side do you want to choose? So as the school year begins, I want you to ask God to give you courage. I want you to ask courage to be the friend that you need, but be that to others. Pray for an opportunity to practice being Jonathan in the friendship. But first and foremost, the first step you need to take before you get there is to continue to grow and develop your relationship with God, because that ultimately, and above all else, is what others need in their life. They need someone to be the physical manifestation, to be the physical presence of God in their life. Because for some, they will never open a Bible to read it, but instead, they are going to read you. And if they read you in a way that is showing them that, hey, God is on my side. I am valued by God. All the truth that is in the Bible that we would desperately want them to understand and read. Or are they going to read you and say, I'm not valued by them. I get ignored. I'm not worth it for them to come and say hi to me. All those things that we experience sometimes on a daily basis. So as the school year progresses, as the school year just continues to roll on forward, make that choice. Do you want to be the friend that people only come to have drama, to get something for themselves? Or do you want to be that friend that everyone desperately wants to be with because you feed their soul by being that physical presence of God in their life? Let's pray. Father, I thank you for this time that we get to spend with each other, and I just ask that I just ask for courage. I ask for the courage to put our own desires sometimes to the side and look at the people in our lives through your eyes, to see the value that they hold, to see the worth that they have in their life, and to have this longing for everyone that we ever come in contact with to learn who you are and to learn how much a relationship with you would make a difference in their life. I ask for courage when we feel that gut feeling or the thought cross our mind about something that the Spirit is leading us to do, that we would act on it. And Lord, I just ask that we learn to be a good friend, that we model that scriptural friendship from Jonathan and David to a point where it becomes second nature to us, that we automatically will go beyond the surface of what we see or what we hear other people are like, and we would learn and figure it out for ourselves and learn the ways that you view them and why you view them as a precious child. I ask for blessings in the rest of this week and keep everyone safe. Amen.